So then they, but then it's funny because they've done it and it's turned out really, really well. But I have never done that. I've never done that. And a 30-day challenge.
Like that, no, I'm doing that because since the year started, creativity started back up. So it's really creative. It's pretty much stressed. And so travelers with excitement because there's this travelers who think of literature.
Right there.
Attention, attention. Hi, we're about to get started now. Thank you all so much for attending Cooperation Jackson's Parisian report back. And just to go over the specifics for the agenda for tonight, we'll be going over the overview and why a Freedom Road from Jackson to Paris on why we went. And then there will be a vision of and sustainability way forward, the Jackson Just Transition Plan that we'll be talking about. And then the delegation's reflections. Each of us will be talking about our personal view on why we went to Paris and then what we learned while we were out there. And then there will be Speaker Richard Bensinger from United Auto Workers and reflections from the comrades in Paris. And then the Mississippi implementation of the Clean Power Plan and local Mississippi Clean Energy Coalition. And then we'll have the open discussion and then what the next steps would be and what that means for Jackson, what the outcome was for Paris and COP. And then now I guess we'll be going over why we decided to go to Paris. So here's Brandon.
Peace, everybody. So I don't know if y'all caught that. I played David Axelrod, Earth Rod. That was the music that y'all were listening to coming in. I thought it was fitting, kind of thinking about climate change and just kind of what these world leaders and these corporations have been doing to the environment. Yes, it's rotting the earth. And so wanted to put that out there. Yeah, so the reason we went to Paris for the COP21, this is the 21st Conference of Parties that the United Nations has had dealing with the climate. For us, it's like we don't have any illusions about kind of the limitations of the United Nations, limitations of the governments that are in bed with the corporations. For us, it's more so how can we not only put pressure on the governments, but also how we helping to build a global movement that can bring about a transition that we need in order for our planet and for us to be able to sustain human life, right? And so being that we're down here in the South, being that we're down here in Mississippi, the South is probably one of the most heavily extracted places in the country in terms of like fossil fuels, in terms of like just even labor force, just energy being extracted from people and from the Earth's resources here. A lot of corporations tend to move their businesses down south because there's so few regulations, limited them to be able to, do business the way they want to do it. and doing business the way they want to do it many times means cutting corners, and putting the people that work for these organizations at risk, of getting cancer, risk of having serious kind of injury, right? And also the surrounding communities at risk of getting cancer, at the same risk that those workers may have, right? And so being is that like we are trying to build a sustainable community here, we're trying to build an eco-village here. It was important for us to connect with folks in the global movement that are doing similar things all around the world, right? People in France, people in North Africa, people in Latin America. It was folks from all over the world that were there, not only putting pressure on the governments and the corporations and all of that, but also coming together to share kind of where our progress is at, who has some dope ideas here that we may be able to apply over here, who has some stuff over there that may work for our situation. All of those kind of things I felt like made the trip to France really fruitful, because those connections are lasting, and I feel like in order for the governments to listen, in order for the corporations to listen, in order for the UN to listen, we need to multiply our movement by at least 100. I'm like trying to be nice. We need to multiply our movement, and make it so that we don't have to ask them. We're demanding change, and so that those were the reasons that we came out there, and people got to see and we got to share about our plan for just transition here in Jackson, which is deeply rooted in the work that folks have been doing for years, trying to bring about solidarity economy, trying to bring about economic democracy here in Mississippi. So I'm not the MC. Whoever's the MC can come up and grab the mic.
I'm gonna grab the mic, right? And I have my girl Shay's back. So we wanted to be able to talk to you a little bit about the Jackson Just Transition Plan. And I know that many of you have actually been here when we were having different events to fundraise and support the delegation going to Paris. And so I think looking around, maybe about half of you already know about the Jackson Just Transition Plan. But we definitely want to talk about it because Paris presented an opportunity for us to be able to be on a global and be in a global environment, be on a global stage, but talk really about the importance of what's happening locally here in Jackson, here in Mississippi, in the Southeast, like Brandon said, and even the United States, because as many of you know, when it comes to human rights and United Nations and a lot of international venues, the United States has a narrative of being the model and also being really the police of those who the US deems as not living up to human rights standards. And so it was really important for us to not only be there as Cooperation Jackson, but to also be there as a part of the It Takes Roots delegation. And it's the It Takes Roots delegation to weather the storm. And we're a part of the National Climate Justice Alliance. And so groups from the Climate Justice Alliance, groups from the Grassroots Global Justice Alliance, the Indigenous Environmental Network, all joined together with the different alliances and all the different groups that make up those networks to have a large contingent of grassroots frontline communities be in Paris from the United States to say this is what's going on with oppressed communities in the United States, and we are in solidarity and have similar experiences and need to be in communication with our brothers and sisters around the world around how we address the issues on a global level, but even like what our responsibility is here in the United States around what the United States, the role that the United States plays in the oppression of other people and communities worldwide. And so I just wanted to add that in terms of like why it was important that we went, but we definitely had in mind being able to uplift and highlight as an example the Jackson Just Transition Plan and the idea of, as a part of that plan is that we want to move and help to be the catalyst to look at Jackson as being a sustainable city. And I think a lot of times, and I think this is actually shifting, but activists are looked at as always complaining. And so even though we were there and we wanted our voices heard in terms of what was wrong with the UN process, we were also there as an example of what our solutions are and the vision that we have to be able to present in direct challenge and direct opposition. And so when we talk about just transition, we're talking about moving away from the system of extraction that we currently live in and the economy of extraction that we live in. And so for us, the Just Transition Plan and the idea of creating sustainable communities and Jackson as a model of sustainable communities is multi-layered. You know, it's related to climate change, it's related to environmental justice, but it's also about economic justice. It's also about workers' rights. It's also about how we live sustainably, not only with our ecology and the environment, but how do we live sustainably with each other. And so as a part of our Sustainable Communities Initiative, it's a two-pronged approach. One is the approach on policy reform and being able to put forth more visionary, proactive policy. But then the other part of it is being able to create an eco-village that is rooted with the community land trust. And so a community land trust is a way for land and housing and anything that rests on top of land to be decommodified. With the community land trust, you are ensuring long-term, you know, they like to say 100+ years because, you know, it's hard to say that anything's gonna last forever. But with the community land trust model, you're ensuring affordable housing permanently. You're ensuring that the community has ownership and is a part of the direct decision-making process about what happens in their community, whether it's building a school or having an affordable apartment, or what kind of business is going to come and be a part of that community. And it's really about, and in line with what we talk about when we talk about economic democracy, because it's about keeping resources that are constantly extracted from our communities and from ourselves and our bodies in our communities. And so the eco-village model is linked with our goal of creating economic democracy and the solidarity economy through cooperatives. So we're talking about, there are different ways, and I think there are different ideas in terms of how you make that happen. For us, it's about creating a vibrant network of worker-owned cooperatives and other enterprises and businesses that are democratically managed and run by the workers themselves and supported by the community. And so within an eco-village, there's a holistic way of looking at how we relate to each other in terms of work, in terms of play, in terms of you know, our households, our lives, how we're living sustainably, how we're thinking about zero waste. And so for us, we see the interconnected and interdependence of those cooperatives being able to rely on each other and provide a service to the community. And so we're really excited that well, 3 of our cooperatives have really progressed through the working groups and the members of the working group of Cooperation Jackson, who have been really working hard on volunteer hours to develop these cooperatives. And so the Urban Farm, Freedom Farms, we have a plot in the back of the center, and they are, they're producing already. They're producing produce, herbs. We've even sold them during the Kwanzaa celebrations here in Jackson. And so that's really exciting. And because the farm can produce produce, but also can use compost, a composting cooperative, right, is connected to the farm, and the farm is connected to the cafe. And so the cafe is progressing as well, and we're really excited and looking forward to being able to launch and open our doors to everyone. And so the food waste that could go in the garbage from the cafe is actually going to go into the composting to feed back into the land, and the produce that will, and the herbs and fruit, hopefully, that will be used in the cafe. And so those are 3 examples, and we have other ideas in terms of where we want to get those things moving. James in the back is a part of the working group looking at compost recycling and waste management as a cooperative. But we're also, talking about exposing our community to the history of cooperatives that already exist in our community, so that we can begin working together to address our own needs, have self-determination, and build community wealth. And so anyone who has ideas, we're here to help support the incubation, and we're learning ourselves, but we're here to support the incubation of these cooperatives in Jackson, and we hope. And we're a part of a regional network, the Southern Grassroots Economies Project, where we're hoping that this is something that can really flood and spread and build and really shift and transform the economy that we're living under currently, which is oppressive and exploitative. So I have lots of copies. I think I might have even gone over my time. I don't want to go into too much detail. We're going to talk about this a little bit more during the last part of the program, where we talk about next steps. Because so far this is a draft, and it's something that we've talked about and worked with, and we've had conversations with in our membership, and we really need to have a process where we move it forward in order to develop it as a community document and a living document that we could move forward and help implement. So we'll talk about that more during the next steps.
Okay, so that was the Jackson Just Transition Plan. And then we'll be going over the reflections now. So Elijah, he's gonna go let you know his story prepares right now.
Good evening. Yeah, so before we went out, before I even got trained, I was sitting in we were in the office, and I was asked if I'd like to go to Paris. I immediately said yes. And at first I didn't know why, but Kali made sure that I had enough education and information about the actions that were going on and the movements that were happening around climate justice. And so I was ready to prepare. And so when we went there, this was 2 weeks after the attacks that happened. And when those attacks happened, I was so scared. I was so scared. I didn't know what to say. I knew I still wanted to go, but I was so afraid of what could happen. I was kind of hoping that it got canceled. And then, I didn't tell anybody. So they didn't know. They didn't know. They did it. But and so we get to Paris, and it was great. But I was really excited. But as stuff became more serious, I had to make sure I had to come to the realization that I'm a foreigner in another environment. Attacks just happened, so there's probably going to be an eye out on me in our delegation. So we I had to make sure that I was ready to. I wasn't just ready, but I just had to keep a cautious eye out. I had to make sure that I was aware of my environment. I met a lot of great people, a lot of great comrades. We talked about a lot of issues pertaining the environmental issues that are going on in Paris as well. I got to see how big